Crystal, what are you taking a look at?
On the eve of Joe Biden's re-election announcement, one thing has become incredibly clear. The media does not want you to think you have any other options. In article after article, they declare that Biden has no, quote, serious primary opponent, as if that is up to them to decide. Their Democratic primary polls reflect laundry lists of candidates who have no intention of running, while leaving the actual declared candidates off of the list. And sometimes the media, they just outright lie, all in service of making sure that as much as the Democratic primary base wants to move on from Biden, they are not allowed to even evaluate the existing alternatives. The very same tactics they used against every anti-establishment Democratic candidate, from Bernie to Yang to Tulsi, they are all back with a vengeance. The media and the Democratic Party have spent the last 8 years waxing poetic about democracy, but at every turn, they show their contempt towards voters and the actual democratic process. No one has been more smeared and erased in this process than Marianne Williamson, and it's no accident that this effort has escalated just as she's begun to show a bit of real momentum. In recent weeks, Marianne has polled as high as 14% in battleground states, 10% nationally, over 20% with young voters. This enthusiasm of young voters has become particularly visible on their platform of choice, that would be TikTok. As Ryan Grimm documented, Williamson has become an outright sensation there. Her videos and fan accounts, they rack up millions of views, sharing her comments on politics, on life, and her critique of Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. The enthusiasm for Marianne by anyone on any platform, though, simply can't be tolerated by the Biden team and their allies who dare to call themselves journalists. Take a look at this article that was flagged by Katie Halper. Reuters wrote an entire piece that was supposed to be just a completely neutral listing of the current and potential 2024 contenders on both the Democratic and Republican sides. It's titled Fact Box 2024 U.S. presidential election. Who is in, who is out, and who is still thinking about it? But this so-called fact box contains the opposite of facts. They included everyone from Asa Hutchinson, who polls at 0%, to Chris Sununu, who polls at 0%, to Mike Pompeo, who polls at 0% and has already said he is not running. To my surprise, they actually did include RFK Jr., although they weirdly didn't bold his name the way that they did all the other candidates for some reason. Conspicuously left off this list altogether, however, was Marianne Williamson, in spite of the fact that she is polling higher than the vast majority of contenders that they did bother to name. I simply cannot believe that someone who calls themselves a political journalist doesn't know who Marianne Williamson is. She's been in public life for decades. She was a candidate last time around as well. The only realistic explanation of this omission is that it was an intentional lie, motivated either by arrogant contempt towards Marianne or to curry favor with the Biden regime. Now, Marianne herself replied to this so-called journalist on Twitter asking, "Are you under the impression I do not exist or that I am not running?" Under pressure, Reuters was forced to do a stealth edit of the article to acknowledge that Marianne Williamson does in fact exist and is in fact running for president. As if it isn't enough that they ignore Marianne, unless they're smearing her, of course, the media's most damaging tactic is their acceptance and propagation of an anti-democracy status quo, especially when it comes to the Democratic Party. If the Republican Party was planning to have no debates and just simply to anoint Donald Trump, all of these supposed guardians of democracy, they would be rending their garments and melting down about authoritarianism and fascism. But when the DNC rigs the primary states for Biden and plans 0 debates, they just accept this as a matter of course. Of course they would do this. The Washington Post turned in a perfect example of this with their big article about Biden getting set to announce his reelect. In it, they assert with zero judgment that, quote, the National Democratic Party has said it will support Biden's reelection and it has no plans to sponsor primary debates. They go on to offer the standard line about how Biden faces no, quote, serious challenge. This total shutdown on public debate is even more detrimental to democracy since Biden has sat for far fewer interviews and held fewer press conferences than any president since Ronald Reagan. He remains in hiding from the American people and the press. They just accept it. Democracy dies in darkness, right, guys? When Marianne does get coverage, it shows why the press and the Biden team are so desperate to hide her very existence. In a recent cable news appearance, one of the rare times she was actually invited on since launching her bid, she had a lot to say about elite Democratic failures. Take a listen.
I think that one of the things we've talked about here already is that things are not okay. We have 39% of Americans who now report, 44% of millennials, that they have skipped meals in order to pay their rent. We have 1 in 4 Americans who live with medical debt. We have 64% of Americans who are living paycheck to paycheck. 60% of Americans who could not absorb a $400 unexpected expenditure. Look at those facets that I just talked to you about, and you talked to me about mental health. We talk about the mental health crisis. We need to talk about what's at the root of that, and to talk about how much of that comes from chronic economic anxiety. We have a political class. We have a political class that is not planning any fundamental economic reform. And I'm running for president. I'm running as a Democrat because incremental change is not enough. When you have a lack of universal health care, although we have it in every other advanced democracy has tuition-free college, which we had until the 1960s. I'm old enough, Allison. There was a time in this faraway land called the 1970s when the average American, there was a thriving middle class. The average American worker had decent benefits, could afford a home, could afford a car, could afford a yearly vacation, could afford to send one parent to keep one parent could stay home if they wished, and they could afford to send their kids to college. So no, people are not okay. And I'm running for president because we need a fundamental economic U-turn, not just incremental change. People need to have health care in this country, need to be able to go to college. People need the bandwidth to thrive. And if all a politician can say is, I'll help you survive an unjust system in the richest country in the world, something is wrong. We need someone from outside that system to say the system should not be unjust. We need an economic U-turn, and that's what I will do if I'm elected president.
Now, that clip has already racked up hundreds of thousands of views on TikTok. So you won't be surprised to learn Biden team trying to silence her there as well. According to Marianne campaign volunteer Tim Cox, TikTok moderators have banned at least 2 Marianne supporter accounts, Marianne Williamson for Prez and Lefty Takeover. These accounts had tens of thousands of followers, no terms of service violations, but they were spammed by Biden supporters, mass reporting them, according to Cox. Now, I spoke with the woman who runs the Marianne Williamson for Prez account, and she confirmed that this had indeed happened. She told me that, quote, the account is still banned, and I have not heard a single peep back from TikTok on why they took my account down. I broke no rules. These heavy-handed tactics reveal a Biden team much more nervous than their public bluster would have you believe. Now look, no one's going to deny it is exceptionally difficult to oust any incumbent president. However, this one does have some real vulnerabilities. Don't take my word for it. Just ask the voters. 73% of voters wish the current president would not run again. That includes a majority of Democrats. Only 1/3 of voters believe Biden deserves to be reelected, and majorities disapprove of his handling on every major issue that was tested in a recent CNN poll. Majorities say he is not honest, does not care about people like them, and cannot work effectively with Congress. But while Americans might be dissatisfied with Biden across a range of issues, the biggest questions are about his basic capacity to serve in the office at all. 65% say he doesn't inspire confidence, and 67% say he doesn't have the stamina and sharpness to serve effectively as president of the United States. Who can blame them for wondering if the oldest U.S. president in history is really up to the task?
So thank you all. God bless you all. Let's go lick the world. Let's get it done. Representative Jackie, are you here? Where's Jackie? I didn't think she was going to be here. More than half the women in my cabinet, more than half the people in my cabinet, more than half the women in my administration are women. I'll either be rolling an egg or being the guy who's pushing them out. Come on, help her.
And so Biden's cronies don't want to contrast with anyone who can articulate a perspective and who is unafraid to expose the failures of the elite political and media class. I am reminded that Dianne Feinstein was able to hold on for her last re-election by avoiding interviews, debates, town halls, anything that would expose her to constituents just how unable to do the job she really was. The Biden camp here is similarly desperate to hide their guy and persuade everyone that there is no actual contest. Whatever you think, any of these candidates, Biden, RFK Jr., and Marianne, at the very least, we deserve actual debates. Demand that the Democratic Party live up to the bare minimum of their pro-democracy rhetoric. And Sagar, it's just amazing to me that they feel so entitled to decide for themselves who's a serious candidate, that they just leave her out entirely and think that's totally fine. Don't include her. Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us. And if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.